Hello, I'm Emily Grip, a student at the Woodring College of Education, exploring the effects of U.S. housing inequalities on education. In my preliminary research, I'm left with more questions than answers and more problems than solutions. Teachers tell students to find a quiet place at home to study away from distractions. Well, that's not easy. Not every child has the luxury of a distraction-free house. Many children compete for study space with siblings and have distractions like TV and video games. In many households, children do not have a dedicated study space. Dining room tables, kitchen countertops, and bedroom mattresses replace the teacher's ideal desk. Families place varying degrees of importance on an effective homework space. A 1990 study concluded that homework magnifies inequalities. Kids with conducive learning environments at home are more likely to spend time at home learning. They get many more hours of education than kids who only learn at school. That's educational inequity. Families may not be able to provide their child with a desk to create structured homework space or even a quiet tabletop. I grew up in a crowded, turbulent house and never did my homework at home. With every missed assignment, my grades plummeted and stress skyrocketed. Did my low-income working parents de-emphasize homework completion because they were too busy to help? I'm sure there are many factors, but I see a correlation between homework completion and social class. Looking at the effects of housing inequalities on education, could homework be related to culture? Could the value of quiet study environment vary by culture? One person in our class said that the tribal teacher at their service learning site valued cultural experiences over homework. Is this a trend? Through my research, I discovered that in 1973, 33,000 Native American kids attended boarding schools hundreds or thousands of miles away from their homes and their cultures. Was this because their parents wanted them to receive a Western education? Or was it because of poor housing? At that time, 90% of Native American families lived in substandard housing. Children living in those conditions would have many challenges getting the same education as children living in housing that meets basic needs. And at that time, 95% of Native American children dropped out of school before high school. Can we determine correlation or causation there with their housing situations? Sometimes, well-meaning programs hoping to provide solutions to substandard housing can actually be a detriment, though. In the 60s, a program called Urban Renewal sought to refurbish so-called crumbling cities by building affordable housing for low-income families. While this new housing was built, families were dislocated to overcrowded temporary housing. Not wanting to move twice, many of those dislocated families chose to stay in those inadequate conditions. And in many cases, an average of one apartment for every 6 dislocated families was rebuilt, leaving more families dislocated than before. Politicians believed that they were taking action to rebuild their cities. They were tearing down their families within their communities in reality. Do low-income housing options provide a safe learning environment for our children currently? Are they adequate for parents to raise a family in? Are those neighborhoods more prone to crime and violence? If children do not feel safe to play in the streets of their neighborhood with their friends, are they getting enough peer interaction that many theorists and studies say promote education? Are they playing with their friends like they used to? In our communities in the United States, housing is dependent on wealth. Neighborhoods usually contain a homogeneous social class with people in the neighborhoods making roughly the same income, so everyone in the neighborhood affords to live there. Nationally, we see trends of certain races making more or less money than other races. In 2012, on average, white households made $24,000 more annually than black households. Asian households had double the income of black households. So if children grow up in neighborhoods made of families earning similar incomes to their own, who can afford to live in those communities? We can assume that children grow up in neighborhoods of majority the same race. So does that community experience foster racism? If a family's housing options are socioeconomically limited, and those limitations are linked to race, are students raised in racially homogeneous neighborhoods and thus racially homogeneous schools racially tolerant? Our elementary education professors keep preaching, promote diversity, but it seems difficult to do that when racism and classism are so ingrained in our society that they determine where we live and the quality of our education. We need change.